Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Dominic Bickus and Dave Dini with our third podcast here. Today is May 1st of 2020, and what a month we just went through.
Woo! I'll tell you what, I'd like to say I'm not a little bit tired. I'm going to fake it till I make it. I feel great, but I do feel great. And I feel great because of the energy that has been being produced in our place and in the dealerships that decided that they can do it. They could fight against the grain like salmon swimming upstream. You know, you're scared, you're not sure what's going on, but you just keep swimming, and it's been paying off for a lot of dealerships.
And we made it. I woke up this morning with a sense that a weight was lifted from my shoulders. It was we survived another one, and this was one much different than many months we've had.
Yeah, big time.
Let's talk about that a little bit, Dave. So I know our last time we spoke to the audience, I believe it was early April, we talked about what our thoughts were going into the month of April. I know there was a lot of uncertainty out there. We weren't sure what the end of the month might look like. What were we thinking as an organization going into this month?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, we spoke, I think our last podcast, or not podcast, but maybe just a view from us, right? A little take impromptu was that, look, let's offer up an opinion, which is what we did. Now, my opinion on things maybe shouldn't be considered by everybody, because my opinion has a tendency to be optimistic. I also think that I'm a pretty grounded person. I'm a realist, but I'm optimistic. I look for the opposite view of the naysayers. So if someone's pessimistic, if someone's automatically on, it can't be done, I can't help myself. My brain is automatically, I can, when you say I can't. My brain automatically looks for the opposite of a negative thought. That being said, we don't want to be foolish. So we had to do some things at the start of April I might not normally do, but as a good business person, you almost had to do, which was we had to lay some people off. We had to fight for survival at some point. You know, they say expect the best, prepare for the worst. So we had to. That being said, the whole time in my mind, it was like nails on a chalkboard. I'm like, this is not right. But we had to do it. But I was looking for the first sign of anything good to say I knew it, and
And I think it
recover.
Came pretty quickly.
It did.
It definitely came pretty quickly. We went into the month. We knew the accounts that we were still working with. We wanted to make sure we performed like we did. And now we're sitting here at the beginning of May 1st. Well, I want to talk about some of the success stories we've had, and there's a handful of them. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Let's go into a few of these for the audience and let them know about some of the success we've had here this month.
Yeah, and before we touch on those success stories, I think maybe it's important to remind some people that maybe didn't listen to the April 11th podcast. I don't know if it was considered a podcast, whatever it is.
Message.
All right, fine, thank you. The message from April 11th was, hey, look, our phones are ringing. We're the BDC for a lot of dealerships. We've taken over the BDC responsibility for many because of layoffs internally for these dealerships that we have great partnerships with. And they said, hey, Dave, I know you're doing equity mining. Can you help us here? Even though you haven't been the BDC, can you help? Of course. We come in and fill the gap. And by doing that, it's given a lot of dealerships an opportunity to look at their internal processes, their fixed ops.
Yeah.
And one of those fixed ops has been, we have this BDC, and this BDC is our fixed op to help leads and whatever. So long story short, we took that over. And a lot of dealerships that we are dealing with have had great success.
Yeah.
Because their expectation was so low. Not on us, but just on the month. And because their fear was driven to them through the media and through this pandemic, which is real, they weren't sure what to do either. But they stayed open. Then once they stayed open, they dipped a toe in the water and said, hey, we can do this. Then they started playing with the shelter-in-place rules, which playing means playing by those rules, which says you got to have an appointment. That we already do that.
Yeah.
And the next thing they knew, they were getting as much traffic as they were getting on a normal weekday.
All by appointment.
All by appointment. So many dealerships now are asking, wow, to Bettenhausen, the biggest dealership for Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and Ram for FCA in the Midwest. Hey, how do you guys do it? What they I think year over year they had almost as good in April. They were flirting with it. They wound up a little bit short of last April. How'd they do it? In part, they just kept on keeping on, doing the things that they know would help them, which was appointment setting by Paramount to help their BDC where they had a lot of layoffs. And they wound up with a fantastic month. I think they sold, I don't know the exact numbers, 160 something new. Is that right? I don't know if they got quite there, but they were close. And I know that that's their goal this month.
Yeah.
As well as a big goal for their new. So Bettenhausen had a tremendous month. A newer dealership in Ellisville, David Taylor Ellisville.
Right outside of St. Louis, about 30 miles west.
Yep. They were they're new as of maybe October. They took over for a former dealership, and we've been steady with them. They wanted to hit 100 cars this month. They hit 100 cars. They were like 105.
Yeah.
60 new. I mean, they're joyous. They're excited. There was
And what do we do exactly for Ellisville? What was that relationship?
everything. When they were fighting for whether they should develop a BDC or not, they're not sure. We took over the BDC and we do equity mining. We have packages for both. And we just did a great job for them. Racine Toyota took over for them as well as the BDC for them and equity mining. They wanted to hit 100 cars this month. They had to sell 13 cars on Thursday.
Last day.
Yep.
Last
And
24
with
hours.
same day and everything else, boom, they hit theirs. Who else was there?
Evergreen Kia was another one.
Evergreen Kia. Andy Francis, a maverick, old school guy, hustler, and Pete Macrius, a guy who's been in the business forever. They're saying, hey, you know, Dave, we know you can help us. Let's get some BDC work going. So as of April 16th, they had, I think, 75 people through the door. And I think
it was 49.
Yeah, I think that's the number.
Yeah.
There was almost 50 cars sold. And they finished around 230 cars sold. And from April 17th on, so we helped them sell an additional 170-something vehicles to get them to 225. And we brought in an additional maybe 180 people over that course of time. Was it 180? They finished at 225. We helped them sell 150. I think it was more like an additional 200-something people. So, this doesn't happen by magic. We know we can't take all the credit. But what what we're excited about is that we did have a hand in it.
Yeah.
And it's given a lot of dealerships an opportunity to look in and say, hey, can we be better because of this?
Yeah.
It's like our motivational meeting we had today.
Absolutely.
Opportunity to grow from this circumstance. So RZA, we stepped up. RZA gave us a call. It's RZA Buick GMC Cadillac.
Out in Tinley Park.
Right?
Yeah.
And Jimmy, called and they said, hey, can you help us here? We've got everybody laid off. We've heard about you. We said, no problem. The last week of April, you can call Jimmy. And Jimmy's like, man, you guys were unbelievable. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't even have people in here. And now, we're signing them up for May.
We came in there on that Monday.
That's right.
With some of our best. Said, I think it was 20 appointments and about 4 hours worth of work. And
Yeah.
I know they were impressed to see what the difference really was.
Right. And the difference was not just what you said, which was obviously the difference, but how we went about our business, how hard we dial the telephone, how we stay through objections and help overcome things. If people think that people on the other end of the phone are going to be turned off by salesmanship, those are people who don't know how to sell. Those are people who are weak and say, oh, we don't do that here. At dealership XYZ, we don't do that. We have a certain philosophy. If your philosophy is failure, if your philosophy is we don't push, then you're not selling many cars. If your philosophy is treat people like you want to be treated, be kind, be gentle, have a select message, and be persistent with your message because you care and because you know you have something of great value for somebody, then you need the Paramount difference.
And I think we've seen this month especially, customers they're at home. They have more time to spend on the internet, whether they're scrolling through Facebook, looking on YouTube, or shopping for cars. We've seen, as an aggregate, internet leads, they've remained relatively constant or even increased.
They've increased, and you do get, as many probably have seen, more of the not so great credit, right? Because everybody's taking a chance based on 0% and deferred payments and all these things. So you might have to decipher a little bit or discern a little bit more. At the same time, some people are worried you can't just jam people with this or that. We're not jamming anything. We are respectful to everybody that calls. Everybody's understanding of the shelter-in-place laws. They also understand that they can purchase. We could bring the car to them. They could test drive it. We can bring it, the whole process we can bring to them. They understand all that, and we're happy to do that for them too.
Absolutely.
At the same time, this is not a circus where all of a sudden, everybody has to buy a car over the telephone and give out price. That's silly. That's never going to change. And if anybody thinks that's the way car buying is going to go, they're going to be behind the times and lose a lot of sales. That's not how you do it.
Absolutely. I think it's important for us to understand that the industry itself is changing, but that does not mean that customers will stop going into the dealership. It comes down to the salesman being able to make a logical case of why they should go purchase vehicle X from dealership A as opposed to B, C, D, or E.
Right. Things haven't changed. You know what's changing? It's changing to where it should be. People in the dealership, the salesperson is changing.
Yeah.
They're recognizing that to be a salesperson, you can't just slough somebody off and stick them in a corner. I'll be with you when I can get there, and I'm God's gift to the world, therefore you should kiss my feet and buy cars for me. No. You should treat each customer like it's your first and your last. It's your greatest opportunity in the world is that customer.
Absolutely.
Treat them like that.
I think another success story we had this month here, Lone Star Toyota down in Texas.
Ron Bowie.
Ron Bowie, our guy Ron Bowie. How about that? I mean,
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ron. I know came into the month, the Texas shelter-in-place orders might have been a bit different than some of the ones we faced here in the Midwest. But how about the month that they pulled out over there?
Yeah, I mean, according to what we've seen, Ron is just a killer as it is. His grosses are through the roof. And they sold, 120 cars, and maybe what do they normally sell? Maybe 180, 160?
Yeah, about 150.
So he was down a little bit. His grosses, though, were through the roof, so he must have made it a focus.
Yeah.
And through the process of us letting us talk to the customer, so they felt validated and that we completely understood their precarious time with the pandemic and everything else. That message is important, not just slung them in here, but now that people are coming in for an experience. They don't necessarily have to buy, but they're coming. Now, instead of that being people visit one dealership every 1.3 dealerships before they buy, or 1.6, whatever that number is, no. They're coming in because of what's going on, and they're just buying there.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what we're finding. It's one and done. There's no more goofing around, messing around. So that message has to be succinct, it has to be transparent, and it has to be holistic. And people are feeling into this sense of, wow, these people are good people. These are good human beings I'm talking to. I have that rapport. I have that trust. That's the difference.
And I think what I've found personally, being on the front lines with a lot of these communications, is it might take more work to get that same customer into the doors. Whereas before it might be, hey, when can you come in right now? Because it's Saturday and the customer's going out driving around, walking into dealerships. Now a lot more of that work needs to be done up front. But we talked about this earlier. You need to think of ways to get more creative. How do we communicate with this customer during this time where it might take a phone call, it might take an email and a text, another phone call to get them in? I think that's what it's proven to us, is as long as you stay on these customers with a similar message each and every time.
Yeah.
I think that's what helps.
I think you're absolutely right. And what is important to remember is that this is not to downplay people. I hope people at BDCs right now aren't thinking, oh, they're doggers. They're fantastic. This is a team. So there are some people left over that are fantastic. There is salesmanship involved here.
Yeah.
That a lot of people don't know how to do, and the average BDC person doesn't know how to do. Meaning, hi, I got to check with my wife. I got to check with my husband. No problem. Are they there right now? No, they're not. All right, fine. I'll call you back. As soon as you start laying down for the little floating objection, you may never get these people back on the phone again.
Right.
Well, let me ask you, Mrs. Smith, when you really want to go out shopping sometimes just to get away, do you have to bring your husband on every shopping trip? Well, no, not on every, and vice versa to the husband. So what we're suggesting is maybe you go take a trip. Maybe it's time to get out of the house. And if this is not everything that we said it's going to be, then why waste your wife's time too? But if it is, then maybe it's an opportunity to want to bring the wife back. All of a sudden, you know what? Yeah, Dave, no pressure. You make sense. The people are there. And they brought the wife anyway.
Yeah.
And, you're making the sale. And the bottom line is the closing ratio is so much greater and so much higher because the people don't want to just go out of their way to shop. They're going because they're going to purchase.
That's right.
That's what we're finding.
That's right.
So.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about and discuss, Dave, what we see moving forward. I know we're now at May 1st here in 2020. This year has been a roller coaster, to say the least. I know our government out there, they've said some of these rules might be being loosened up a bit, but shelter-in-place orders still look like they're going to remain intact in the aggregate. What do you think? What would be some maybe advice or even 2 cents, or how do you think the top managers, top owners within our industry are going to be operating? How are they going to look to tackle this problem?
Yeah, I think what we're finding is those that are not even aggressive, those that are optimistic, conservatively optimistic, are going to find that they can hit similar numbers in May that they hit last May. They got to check their advertising to make sure the sources that are bringing in the greatest amount of return, the greatest amount of leads, and leads that they could do something with, you got to really concentrate on what you're spending your money on. And then you need to have your greatest talent handle those leads. Where before, it maybe didn't matter quite as much because you had organic walk-in.
Yeah.
You just don't have that organic walk-in.
Right.
Now that's starting to come back a little bit. And you got to tell your customers that are walking in, hey, you need to go back to your car and set an appointment, and come in, which is fine, right? They can do that. But that's important to recognize that you have to be selective in your advertising and the people that handle those leads. You can't just pass them off to just anybody. It has to be your best.
I think the difference, as we found it, is talent on the telephone.
Yeah.
Whoever is at your dealership, if it's the general manager, the sales manager,
Take all the calls.
the top salesman, that's who you want handling these leads.
No doubt.
Period.
No doubt. We talked about the players in the industry. They have a commonality. The commonality is that they're aggressively optimistic or I say conservatively optimistic, but their aggression's coming back, and people are buying in one spot. We also understand that part of the aggression of the consumer is to get a deal. So the consumer wants to get a deal, but they're not going to go shop in a whole lot of places. They're going to find value in that trip to the dealership and pay more because of the experience that they're having. So many consumers are saying, wow, this is the greatest experience I've ever had. So they'll pay a little bit more. They like the 0% financing, the deferred payments. That's great. But I think the dealerships as a whole are going to have a little bit of trouble at some point with the pre-owned market.
Yeah.
Right? We have over 4 million leases coming due, expiring.
In this year.
Right? Which is, I guess, more than that's happened in a long time, going back to 07, 08. So if we have a saturated market of pre-owned, then that might put the consumer of pre-owned in a little bit more driver's seat and lessen the value of what you have on your lot. So the focus is going to be more on new,
right?
And pushing leases again and things, which is fine. When you start doing that, if the manufacturers don't get up and running, there might be a little bit of a lag in new cars.
Right.
So
a supply shock.
Right. So the demand might be on pre-owned. You might not. So you got to really watch how you're buying your pre-owned vehicles.
Yeah.
You got to do. And I think right now, because the deals are so great on new, and people love the experience so much, really focus on what you're buying those cars for. It's imperative. It could really hurt you later on.
Or what you're buying those trade-in vehicles for.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the consumer here. I'm talking about the dealership buying those trades.
Right.
Whether it be at auction or from the consumer is right in front of you. You got to watch what you're buying these things for.
Absolutely.
Because there's a train coming down the track called supply and demand. And if supply is way up because of all these leases coming due, demand isn't going to be that great. And you're going to have a lot of losses on your hands.
Absolutely. So. And I know, Dave, we've talked about just the attitude that we've had during this time, where I know many companies, organizations all throughout the world right now, a lot of them are just looking to stay afloat. A lot of them are just looking to get by, hoping that this will end. I know the words coming from your mouth and our message has been, this is the time to gain market share. We as a company, we're hiring, we're growing, we're expanding, we're looking for talented individuals to join our organization. Talk about that a little bit and how you arrive at such a mindset.
Dom, I think our interview here, whatever we're going to call it, the message, it is a mindset. And you don't want to throw caution to the wind and flout the general rules of recognizing what you see, feel, and hear. But it's a cautiously optimistic attitude or aggressively pessimistic attitude.
Yeah.
There are pessimists out there that want to be right so badly that are going to sit on their dollars like they're trying to hatch an egg. And in my world, in my estimation, in my view of things, I want to be the salmon swimming upstream. I want to go against the grain so badly because I want to be optimistic.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm throwing caution to the wind or being reckless because I'm recognizing that people want to buy cars still.
Yeah.
There's still a need for people to buy vehicles. So you have an opportunity right now to revamp your business a little bit, your culture, make your salespeople get better at treating a customer better. Make your overall process unique because you're a wonderful person and you're going after this customer with customer service. I want to do anything I can for you.
Right.
Wow, holy smokes. I don't think people have experienced that at a car dealership in years. Yeah, maybe upper luxury, but not for a Chevy.
Right.
Not for a Ford. Not for a Chrysler. But all of a sudden, these people are treated like they're buying a Mercedes. Wow, what a reminder. Go back to the basics.
Yeah.
Give everything you got. That's the first customer or the last customer you're ever going to have. What a difference for that consumer. Mm-hmm. And they're going to remember, and they're going to tell your friends. We just got a little something from Brian Brown. Brian Brown's kind of like the more silent guy in the David Taylor organization. And, Brian was speaking today. He's like, Dave, it's funny. He goes, I can't tell the whole story. Mm-hmm. But this one consumer, he knew was going to purchase a vehicle. He left the dealership and they didn't purchase, and he couldn't understand why. So he did some digging and found some things out, and he called the consumer, and the consumer told him a story that wasn't very pleasing. And it's not so much that this consumer shouldn't have known what the thought process maybe was of the salesperson, but they got this feeling that they weren't the most appreciated, and they wanted to tell him that they took their time to tell him that. Mm-hmm. Brian turned it around because he was very embarrassed and grateful at the same time, and was a human being back to them. Just said, look, wow, I have nothing to say, but I'm sorry, and no one should have to go through that. But these people not only bought, but they said this was the greatest experience they've had buying a vehicle. And he goes, will you tell your friends?
Wow.
Right, they're still selling. And they said, absolutely we will.
Wow.
Which just reminded me of, wow, this is the basics of what it's all about. So if you can have that as your foundation, have skill on the telephone so that you know how to talk to people, build rapport, overcome the elephant in the room that they're expecting when they get somebody on the telephone and trying to sell them something, and treat this customer like it's the first customer you've ever had or the last one you're ever going to have. This is your opportunity to gain market share, to be aggressive, to go for it. Not waste money, but to be aggressive in your game plan of selling vehicles. This is the time. This is your opportunity.
Absolutely.
And middle of March for Illinois anyway, in New York for sure, it's a fragile time. You can't. There's no way you could have. April, though, the governor was good enough to give us shelter-in-place laws and rules. It helped you define your business. It helped you create this foundation that says, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And identify the things that are important. May, it's the time to go.
Absolutely.
That's my take.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
I love it. Well, I think this concludes our message here this week.
Go get them in May! Let's go!
This is the time to do it. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back for more soon.
Thanks for the opportunity.